Get your game face on because on Fourth and Frames, we're gearing up for an epic rookie show. I'm Chris Battistel, your host, and I'm thrilled to be joined by my talented co-hosts, Rhett Manuel and Drew Scott. Tonight, we're revealing our top 5 rookies at every position and doing a 2-round, 1 QB rookie mock draft. So grab your popcorn, sit back, and get ready to witness the future of the NFL on Fourth and Frames. Before we jump into it, please like the stream, subscribe to the channel, and hammer that bell to get notified whenever the Fantasy and Frames Network drops new content. And most importantly, rate and review the podcast. And as always, give a warm welcome to the wizard behind the glass, the maestro of our shows, the one and only Gator J. Hope you're good back there, Gator. We make this day easy for you. Drew, how's your week been, brother?
It's been great, man. It's draft week, so it's always fun to hear all the crazy smoke that comes from this week, especially as we lead into it the last couple of days. So I've been having a lot of fun just soaking it all in.
Attaboy. Rhett, you just experienced the draft day movie. What's your score, man? What's your opinion on it?
First off, man, what a rush that movie is. Like, what a ridiculous work of art. But I have to give it a score. I would have to give it 7 vaguely inspirational Post-it notes out of 10. It's a good time, bud.
It definitely is. And it's a little, it kind of art imitating life with the Panthers. It just gives you that feeling of the Panthers brass telling the staff to make a splash. They trade up to number 1. And now there's news about Will Levis, but we'll get into that later. But most
Will
importantly,
Levis, no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. Most importantly, big trade yesterday. The Packers and the Jets finally got it done. Aaron Rodgers is in the Big Apple. A lot of pieces involved as well in terms of draft picks. The Packers are moving up to 15. They got a conditional first round next year. But Drew, I got to ask, man, where does this put Rodgers as a priority for you heading into draft season?
Honestly, man, it doesn't really change much for me. I was kind of already operating under the assumption this was going to happen. And so I kind of figured with him moving to New York, he's probably, as far as redraft goes, he's probably still a QB2 for me on the front end in that like 13, 14, 15 range. And then I already had him as a mid QB2 as far as Dynasty goes. And so it won't really move the needle too much for me.
Yeah. Rhett, what is Jordan Love's ceiling now that he's the QB1 in Green Bay? And what does this mean for Christian Watson?
All right, first off, for Jordan Love, I'm happy for the guy because he's bided his time, and now he's going to have that full opportunity as of now to be the unimpeded franchise quarterback in Green Bay, pending them doing something in the draft. Last year, my man looked much better than he had previously in limited duty. And, he's been on that similar Rodgers trajectory, that Green Bay way, where he sat a few years and all that. Now, as for now, when I'm looking at him, I was going through it today, and I kind of see him currently in Dynasty as that low-end quarterback too. I think I have him as QB 21 right now with some upside, depending on how things shake out, how he looks in preseason. In redraft, I have him one mid to late QB2 around quarterback 19. So to give you some perspective, in Dynasty in my list, that's below guys like Trey Lance, Russell Wilson, Kenny Pickett, and Jared Goff. And above guys in Dynasty, like we said, like Aaron Rodgers, a Hendon Hooker, a Derek Carr, a Matt Stafford, and a Desmond Ridder. As for Christian Watson, we saw the flashes last year. He had the big 3-touchdown game. My man felt like he was on top of the world and all these different things. Mm-hmm. But for me, I'm not sure he's that complete player yet, that complete receiver. So currently I have him wide receiver 21 in Dynasty and 28 in redraft because we're just unsure. But because of the age and the profile in Dynasty, he'll be a little bit higher. He's currently the best in a bad receiver room, so it's hard to know how good he really is. But the potential is there. And so, you can see the upside if things start to fall into place. There's obviously a place where he can rise between now and when the season starts.
Speaking
I've
of
got
that,
him at I got him at quarterback 21 as well, Rhett, and he's
yeah,
one spot ahead of Aaron Rodgers. So I like that. I like your
great
placement of him.
minds, great minds, man. Speaking of that wide receiver room, there's been a lot of smoke of Jackson Smith and the Jigba being picked by the Packers. Of course, as soon as they get rid of Aaron Rodgers, they use that pick where they moved up to pick a wide receiver. But do you see the Packers picking JSN at 13?
I mean, for me, I don't see him getting to 13 because I think the Texans might get him there at 12 if they don't do something else. I think he could be a top. If he gets past the Texans at 12, then the Packers are a very real possibility at 13. But right now, I see him. I think I have him mocked out at 12 to the Texans. So.
Yeah. Other big news around the NFL, we had some gambling suspensions. There's about 6 players, a couple of them out indefinitely. Jameson Williams, wide receiver of the Detroit Lions, suspended 6 games. Drew, have you made any trades for Jameson Williams, buying or selling the player?
So I haven't made any trades. I was already kind of in the selling portion of that. I have him lower than consensus right now. So this news didn't really change much that I could do. The way that I've kind of looked at it is if you're a contender in your league and you're holding Jameson Williams, you might be able to still sell him to somebody that's still high on him and try to get somebody that can produce for you in the short term. If you're just, if your championship window looks like it's getting smaller. And then if you're rebuilding, he is a good buy potentially if this hurts his value enough. In my opinion, right now, it's still somebody I wouldn't necessarily be buying, but assuming this hurts his value at all, I could go look out to acquire him. But Jameson Williams owners, if they really believed and they've been holding him this long, it's going to be tough to get the Jameson Troopers to give up after they've already been holding on as long as they have.
Yeah, no doubt. Rhett, how far down the rank does this put Jamo considering the 6-game suspension?
Seasonal for me, man. I mean, he's down there having wide receiver 60 right now, which is a wide receiver 5. I have him below Michael Thomas, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Zay Jones, Darnell Mooney, all these flex types guys that are going to help you win some weeks on occasions. In Dynasty, I'd call him safe-ish. I mean, we know that the talent is undeniable. The speed is there, all these different things. So in Dynasty, I have him around 30. That's in the same tier as guys like Zay Flowers, Brandon Ayuk, Rashad Bateman, and Christian Kirk, all in a similar tier. So if you're comfortable with waiting on JMO and see what happens there, or if you need to get somebody who could help you right now throughout the year, I'd be looking for guys like that. So,
Yep. I agree. And we had a question from Gator J there. Sell them for what? What is the value with only missing 6 games?
Yeah, so that's part of what makes it tough. Is it in Dynasty? I don't feel like it hurts his value that much. But if you're a contender, if you're concerned about it, some veterans that I have close to him here, guy like Calvin Ridley in Jacksonville, I like him quite a bit. He's 28, so he's a little bit up there in age. If there's somebody that is there's somebody that's on the rebuild side of things and they're sitting on 28-year-old Calvin Ridley, you might be able to flip Jameson for him. Somebody that's in the same tier from a ranking standpoint, but just might have a few years on him. For this specific situation, you're going to have to target Jameson Williams owners that are looking to win, or if you're looking to buy them, you're going to have to try to target the owners that look like their championship window might be sinking. So it's pretty, dependent on your league.
Agreed. Some other big news. Rumors Derrick Henry is going to be traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. Rhett, if he ends up on the Eagles, do you knock Jalen Hurts down a couple spots with the projection that he may not have as much of a rushing upside?
Not in Dynasty. I mean, as a Dynasty, I currently have him quarterback 2 in Dynasty and quarterback 3 in seasonal league. Wouldn't see it hurting his Dynasty stock because Derrick Henry is an older running back, 29 years old right now. What I would say, though, is that in seasonal leagues, it has to take a little bit of a hit. If I have him quarterback 3 now, he probably has to be around that Justin Fields range, which is around quarterback 5 or 6, which is a slight hit, still a QB1, but you have to take it into consideration if that happens for sure.
Correct. I don't know how I feel about Derrick Henry ending up on the Eagles. Fantasy-wise, I think I dropped Derrick Henry down a bit. before I drop Jalen Hurts down a bit, only because Jalen Hurts is going to be the guy in the end zone, right on that goal line to go in and snake some of those elusive touchdowns that you want your running back to get. Some other big news. An anonymous Reddit post made the made the odds for Will Levis going number 1 in this year's draft. Supposedly, he's told his friends and family that he's gonna be number 1. And I don't want to date myself here, but cue the Saved by the Bell don't do drugs clip where they are saying dumb, stupid, gross, it stinks. Because absolutely, you're as a front office and a head coaching staff, you have a shelf life, and to put your reputation and your job on the line for a guy like Will Levis, who's just not that polished as the two guys that most of us have ahead of him, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. I just think it's ludicrous. I'm not buying it. I did throw $5 on it just in case because the odds were good. So just in case, I had to do that. But I got to ask you guys, are you putting your mortgage on him being the 102 or the 101, or are you taking the field, Rhett?
You know where I stand on this. Give me the field. And it's a pretty simple reason why. I mean, I see these other quarterbacks in this draft. I see too much safety in a guy like CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. I see superior upside in a guy like Anthony Richardson. And then I see all this defensive lineman chatter between guys like Jalen Carter, Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson. You know, all these rumors about 102. The truth is nobody really knows what's going to happen. So, yeah. I mean, give me the field because there's just too long of odds that anything in that situation is really going to happen.
Yeah, agreed. And we're about 2 days away from the actual draft, and I don't think Houston knows what they're going to do, let alone if we know what Houston's going to do. Drew, are you putting your money on Will Levis as a top 2 pick?
No, I'm taking the field too, man, for a lot of the same reasons as Rhett. I think I'm probably higher on Levis than most, but even I still have him as QB4. I just don't think the gap between him and QB3 is probably as big as a lot of people have it. But I still think he's the clear 4th best quarterback in this draft, so I can't buy taking him at number 2 overall. But I'll share some other Levis thoughts later. But I'll just say that I think that the hate's gone a little too far though. But I think it's beautiful that we live in a world where an anonymous Reddit post can just move the Vegas odds as powerfully as it did. It's just what a time to be alive.
Yeah, it's wild.
I love this week so much.
We're going to jump into our rankings. We're going to give our top 5 at each position and then break down some of the players where we got them. But before we do, don't forget to join in live, the Dynasty 365 show every Wednesday. And then we got the Shoot the Gap IDP show every Thursday. And then the new Best Ball show with Stacey Perez and Stephanie Miller on Fridays, where they're breaking down the best ball drafts. They host the best ball draft as well. So make sure you're checking all that stuff out. We also got our rookie prospect profiles, our dynasty target profiles, and so much more content on the Fantasy and Frames YouTube channel. So make sure you're hammering that bell to get notified for whenever we do drop new content, which is daily. Let's jump into it, boys. That's why we're here. We're 2 days away from the draft. Let's get into these final pre-draft rankings. I'm sure these are going to change up throughout the whole process of the draft. By our show next Tuesday, if we revisit these, they're going to be all over the place. But let's start with the quarterbacks. Rhett, give me your top 5, brother.
All right, man. It's pretty simple. Like I said, I'm going to be pretty transparent with this. Quarterback 1, I have CJ Stroud. Love his feet, love the mechanics, love the upside, love the floor on that guy. Number 2, give me Anthony Richardson. Tested well, literally the greatest combine quarterback we've ever seen. 3, Bryce Young. 4, Hendon Hooker. Once again, I'll talk about him in a little bit more detail later on if we get the time. And 5, your favorite and mine, Will Levis.
Big Willie. Drew, what are your top 5?
So 1 overall, I've got C.J. Stroud. 2 overall, I got Anthony Richardson. 3 overall, I've got Bryce Young. I want to stop there. I do have a tier there where I've got Stroud, Richardson, and Young all kind of grouped together to where once we see post-draft, what happens with the landing spots, the coaching staffs they're walking into, the weapons they're walking into. I've got Stroud 1 and Young 3 right now. If Young does end up getting drafted by Carolina and the Stroud falling rumors are true and he ends up landing in a less than ideal situation, those guys could very easily end up flipping post-draft. I think they're all pretty close together. But then I got a tier break there. I've got Levis at 4 and then another tier break and Hooker at 5. And so, again, same with Hooker. If he is truly a first-round pick or even maybe an early second-round pick and Levis is the one that falls, those guys could end up being tiered together as well. So, the NFL draft could change a lot, but that's kind of how I've got them grouped together right now.
Yeah, I like it. I like how you broke it down into tiers there. For me, I got C.J. Stroud, Coleridge, Bernard Stroud as my QB1 entering the draft. I got Bryce Young as my QB2. I got Anthony Richardson as my QB3. That's where we vary a little bit. I got Hendon Hooker as my QB4, and I got Will Levis as my QB5. Gator J asks a good question here. Is AR's upside the reason that you have him as number 2, Rhett?
I mean, absolutely. We are talking fantasy football here. And if there is a fantasy football ceiling, if there is one person that is the most likely, based off of his skill set, to put out multiple quarterback 1 seasons among this group, it's going to be Anthony Richardson. He could be Josh Allen. He could be something that completely craps out. But if you have Josh Allen's upside, you have to roll with that and go with him at quarterback 2 at minimum. I debated him as quarterback 1.
And so that I'm glad you said that because it's a point that I didn't bring up that I wanted to talk about as well. And I know we focus a lot on Superflex. It seems like that's kind of what's taken over. But in 1 quarterback rookie leagues that are still out there, I'm in one. I'm living proof we still exist. I actually have Anthony Richardson as my QB1 in 1 quarterback rookie leagues. Just with the quarterback position not being near as important, I'm more than happy to take that risk and draft him as the first quarterback off the board in 1 quarterback. But in Superflex, Stroud is just too safe to me. I think he's the best quarterback. So with the quarterback position being more important in Superflex leagues, I feel more comfortable having Stroud 1 there.
Yeah, Stephanie Miller, I've considered him at 1. It's hard for me to put Anthony Richardson above C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young just because of upside. He's still got to be able to get on the field to showcase and use that upside to get you fantasy points. For me, I'm taking the 2 guys that have the best potential to be starters year 1 and produce right away for me if I'm spending that early draft capital on a quarterback. But I get the Anthony Richardson love. He's a supreme athlete. And if he does get the chance, or when he does get the chance to show what he can do as a quarterback, he's going to be printing money for fantasy managers. And I then at that point, he may put himself into that QB1 range. If he's a starter year 1, I might put him up there above the other 2. But Rhett, we talked about our top 5. Who's the dark horse QB outside of your top 5 that you think has the best shot to shake things up and jump into that top 5 at the end of the year?
Look, I think we're all in pretty good lockstep that there's a clear top 5 and then there's a drop off. But if you have to pick a quarterback 6, for me, it's Jake Haener out of Fresno State. Here's a guy, he's a pocket guy who started his career at Washington, a Power 5 school, transferred to Fresno State, then made most of his time right there. Really accurate passer, had a 72% completion percentage his senior year, which is just astronomical, and did that averaging 8.27 yards per attempt and never averaging below 8 yards per attempt for his career. And for me, that's a threshold that matters because it shows that you can get the ball downfield and that you're making plays and that you have the arm to do so as well. He works from the pocket primarily, but don't underrate his athleticism either. He had a 68th percentile 40-yard dash and an 80th percentile burst score at the quarterback position. So he can really move better than we think and manipulate that pocket. This is the guy that isn't necessarily an elite prospect, but he's quarterback 6 in this class. And in my opinion, if he falls into the right situation, day 2, day 3, whatever that looks like, there could be a Taylor Heineke situation where he finds himself in a starting position and proving himself. So I definitely think he's worth a late flyer in Superflex formats.
Drew, you got a guy outside that top 5 that may find his way up into that top 5?
No, honestly, I'm completely locked in with Rhett on this one. I couldn't agree more. He would be the guy that I would pick as well. And I agree with Rhett that I think that it is a pretty solid top 5. And out of that, I think there is a clear drop at that point. So, but I am with Rhett on quarterback 6 on this one.
Yes, sir. All right, into probably the depth of the class, the running back position, chock full of guys that can be potential fantasy superstars from top to bottom. We got big school guys, we got small school guys. But Rhett, give me your top 5 running backs of the class.
Shocker, number 1 is Bijan. I mean, I don't think any. And another shocker is Jahmyr Gibbs at 2. I think after that, you kind of start to see those tier breaks and those drop-offs. And these other guys, 3 through 5 for me, are pretty much in the same tier. I like Tajay Spears as my running back 3. Kendre Miller is my running back 4. And then Charbonnet, who a lot of people are high on, and I get that, as my running back 5.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what's your 5, brother?
So I've got running back 1. Surprise, surprise. I've got Bijan as well. He's in a tier by himself. Absolutely no question about it. And then running back 2, I've got Jahmyr Gibbs, who again is in a tier by himself. And then this is where it gets interesting for me and where I don't like the fact that we're only listing 5, because my tier 3 right now in this class is my running back 3 through my running back 11. And so I don't like only listing a couple of these guys, because there's so many guys where I like their skill set. It's a deep class. And a lot of it really is just going to come down to draft capital, where post-draft, these tiers are going to be a lot more, slimmed out to where it's not, 3 through 11 in one tier. But nevertheless, I have Zach Charbonnet at 3, Israel Abanikanda at 4, and my man Sean Tucker at 5. I'm not going to let go yet. I'm not. The NFL draft's going to have to tell me to. I'm not going to. I had to put him in there. But then 6 through 11, there's still guys that I like very similarly, but we had to cut it off at 5 there. So this one's a little tougher.
Yeah. I too got Bijan Robinson at 1, Jahmyr Gibbs at 2. I got the TCU running back Kendre Miller at 3. I've been adjusting my rookie running backs for the past few weeks. I had Zach Charbonnet out of there, and then I put Charbonnet in there. When I watch his tape, he doesn't have the elite speed that you want. Was it the top 3 rated offensive line out of UCLA that helped project Charbonnet into the tier that he's in now? I got to see him in the NFL, but I got Charbonnet at 4. And then I got Tajay Spears. I'm with my man Rhett here at number 5. Watching him play the game, I just like what he can do. But Drew, you left Kendre Miller and Tajay Spears out of your top 5 running back prospects. I know you did mention that your tier 3 is pretty deep, but if you had to pick, which of these 2 do you think is more likely to be a bust?
Yeah. So first of all, Tyler, I see you in the comments. I'm sorry, man. I'm not letting go yet. Post draft, I know I'm going to have to probably, because he's not going to get the draft capital that I need, but I'm not letting go yet. So it's funny because Kendre Miller and Tajay Spears are 6 and 7 in my group of 3 through 11. So they were the 2 that barely just missed out. I like both of them a lot, to where if they get the draft capital and one of the guys in my top 5 don't, they'll easily move up there. They're the 2 that are just outside of that. But if I had to pick one that I would be more scared of than the other, it would probably have to be Tajay Spears, just because of the size compared to Kendre Miller, and Kendre Miller playing against better competition. And I know they're both dealing with injuries, so I'm not going to play the injury card necessarily. But I don't like choosing between these guys to pick one to fail, because I like them both. But
you can pick Sean Tucker.
I'm definitely not doing that. But so I'd be riding with Kendre as the guy that would probably hop in my top 5 right now if I had to put either him or Spears in there.
I got you. Rhett, you've ranked Tajay Spears as your RB3. Are you at all concerned, and Drew mentioned it, about his lack of experience playing against the best competition in football?
Look, to an extent, you have to be concerned. But really, if we're going to be concerned, let's be concerned about all of these running backs outside of Bijan Robinson, because all of them have flaws. But let's dig into it with Tajay a little bit deeper. I mean, he came to the combine. People expect him to be a little bit smallish. He weighs in at over 200 pounds. Watch his tape. This is a guy that is in and out of cuts super quickly. Has an elite burst. So you look at that 4.54 40 and you say, well, is he fast enough? Well, I see a guy who gets out of those cuts quickly and gets up to that top speed that he's at pretty well, has shown that ability to miss contact consistently on tape if you look at it. Pretty good pass catcher, guy who runs good routes, so that pass catching upside is going to be there once you go to the NFL, once it develops a little bit more. Talking about his college dominator rating, that's a 31.3, which shows that he was more than getting the job done, and that's on the upper echelon of those mid-tier sort of running backs. Target share was 8% over his final 2 years at Tulane, which means he was getting targeted about 8% of the time, which for a running back in a run-first offense was pretty good. Now, the big thing people talk about is, can he do it against big schools? We saw him do it against big schools, against USC in the Cotton Bowl. That was a killer game. There were 17 carries, 205 yards, 4 touchdowns against one of the best teams in the country. So I heard a comparison, and I'm going to drop this right now and maybe shock a few people. But one comp I heard for him in terms of how he moves. If you're looking at a guy like Tyjae Spears, he can be a poor man's Jamal Charles in this league. Now, is that realistic? Is that going to happen? Probably not. But if you're talking about something that's more realistic for him to be, you're looking at a guy who can be a Jerick McKinnon in this league. And if I remember correctly, just last season, Jerick McKinnon was winning a lot of people fantasy football rings. So if you're looking at a guy in that late first, early to mid-second round space, and a guy who can possibly get you some championships, if he's a great value Jamal Charles or he's a Jerick McKinnon type, it doesn't matter, because if a guy can do that for you and have that sort of potential, as the RB3 at that spot in the draft, I have to feel confident doing it. That's just me, though.
Yeah, I agree with most of that. Stephanie Miller did say he did have some injuries. He had the 2 ACL tears
Same
in the
knee,
past.
right?
Yeah, same knee in the past 4 years. So that's always going to be a question of concern. You're always going to be worried about knees for running backs. I love the Jerick McKinnon comp. I also had a comp of a Miles Sanders. I don't know about the Jamal Charles comp, but I'm drafting him with the hope that he is Jamal Charles light. I mean, I'll take it.
What about this Jay Ajayi comp we got on the screen, though? That breaks my heart because I like Tajay, but, man, that's tough.
It is tough. It's a cold world out there.
Don't do that to my boy.
We're going to jump into probably one of the most debated subjects on fantasy Twitter right now, and it's ranking these rookie wide receivers. For the most part, everyone's got JSN as the number one, but from there on, depending who you talk to, and you're going to hear that from us three right now, it's going to vary. So, Rhett, hit me with your top 5.
No surprises. JSN is everybody's number one. Jackson Smith and Jigba. Let's just be comfortable with the fact that he's going to be the first wide receiver off the board. This is where I start to have fun, because wide receiver 2, I've got my boy Zay Flowers. Wide receiver 3, I've got Quentin Johnston. Wide receiver 4, I've got your guy Jordan Addison. And then coming in hot at number 5, I've got Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma, who I know a lot of us in the Fantasy and Frames family have some love for.
Drew, give me your top 5, big guy.
Yeah, my top 5 is pretty similar. I've got in tier 1 by himself, I've got JSN. Then tier 2, I've got Quentin Johnston at 2, Zay Flowers at 3, and Jordan Addison at 4. And then kind of similar to the running backs, I've got Marvin Mims at 5, but he's at the beginning of tier 3 where 5 through 9 currently set. So, post-draft, a lot of that could change. But a clear top 4, and then at that point, it gets a little messy for me.
Yeah. For me, I got JSN, Jackson Smith, and the Jigba at 1, Jordan Addison at 2, Quentin Johnston at 3, Zay Flowers at 4, and the UNC product, Josh Downs at 5. But Rhett, let's cut to the chase here. You've got Zay Flowers ranked higher than Snoop Dogg at a reggae festival, and you've been bullish and successful in soapboxing wide receivers like Chris Olave in the past. Given the lack of success of late declared wide receivers picked in the first round, care to spill some tea on what's got you so bullish on Flowers this season and why he's got that it factor that other players lack?
Of course, man. So let's get into it. Tape don't lie. Like, we love our analytics. They help us out a lot. But if you watch tape and you watch somebody play and you watch them win, when a guy's undersized like that and he's still winning off the line, that tells me a lot about what he's capable of. This is a guy that's fluid. He's agile. He can win in all areas of the field. Very much, we know he's a slot guy. He's 5'9", 180 pounds. And then he's put on weight. But he has shown that ability, and I think will have the ability to win on the outside due to the fact that he has pretty good ball skills and a 36-inch vertical. You know, he's been a guy who, for the past 3 years at BC, has been knocking on 1,000 yards. And if you know anything about Boston College football, a notoriously vanilla offense that likes to run the ball. So the fact that this guy's been producing at that high of a level tells me a lot about what he can do. You know, he was in the transfer portal before his senior season, had the opportunity to go play at Alabama and improve that draft stock. He stuck it out at Boston College and still is likely going to be a first-round pick, high second-round pick. Lets me know a lot about his character. You know, when guys don't really stick it out and go to that first opportunity more and more these days, the fact that he stuck it out where he felt like he was home and he did a good job over there tells me a lot about him. Okay. Now, I know a lot of people look at him and say, okay, but he's not JSN. You know, he's not polished. He's got this low catch rate. Yes, he hasn't eclipsed 60% catch rate in any of his years, but it has improved every season he's been in college. So it makes me believe that even at 23 years old, he's not quite a finished product yet. He can improve as a route runner, but he's so quick in and out of cuts, and he's so agile that should come with time, I would think. Like I said, good burst, great in the open field. And the thing about rookie drafts is this. We're working on projections. Rookie drafts are about projections, and this is not a guy that's a finished product. 23 years old, yes, but his breakout season was age 20. So late declare or not, let me throw out a hypothetical for you. You guys remember a wide receiver a couple years ago that was smallish, late declare, still a bursty sort of receiver? Any answers for me, guys?
Cooper Kupp.
Cooper Kupp. So I'm not saying Zay Flowers is Cooper Kupp. But what I am saying is this, is that when you have a guy that can just win, small school or not, competition or not, whatever it is, then you have to roll the dice on that guy. Yes, I get it. Cooper Kupp is 6'2" and Zay Flowers is 5'9". Never in the history of ever have we talked about Cooper Kupp winning with his size. He's always won with footwork and route running and all these different things. So for me, I think Zay's absolutely has the potential to be a high producer in this league. And if he's there in the late first round, that's a smash draft pick for me. So
Tyler Hale brought up a good question for you here, Rhett. Jordan Addison creates separation on an elite level. Why is he not higher on your rankings? Is it size?
That's pretty much it. I mean, yeah, they're both on the smaller side of smaller in terms of receivers. But the fact that Jordan Addison is just so dang skinny. Like, I get it. This is the small Kings draft. We've talked about that in depth in the past. But for me, it's just you have to go with a guy who I think can bulldog his way in and out of routes. It's a gut thing for me as well. I'm not even going to front on that.
Got it. Drew, I noticed I was the only one with Josh Downs in his top 5. What is it about Downs that keeps him out of yours?
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, I mentioned that for my tier 3 for my wide receivers, it was, you know, wide receiver 5 to wide receiver 9. Downs is in that group, so he didn't miss being in my top 5 by much, but it's just his size. Obviously, you know, this, as we already said, this is a short king draft of plenty. Josh Downs is another one of them, but 5'9", 170, and then his, you know, not hitting that 20% dominator rating until he was 20 years old, and possibly being just slot only moving forward. It makes me, and that's not the death knell it used to be, but still makes me a little nervous to put him in my top 5. But I do still like him as an NFL player. I just don't know how much I like him fantasy-wise.
Yeah, as the kids say, Stacey here, Downs has that dog in him.
Yeah. If you've got dog factor in your model, he has to rank pretty high. He does have that for sure.
And then I don't have Mims in my top 5. I have him in my top 10 of rookie wide receivers. It's just hard for me to put him above the 5 that I do have in my top 5. But he's right there. It's no specific reason. I just like the 5 that I have more than I like Marvin Mims. But the NFL is quite high on Marvin Mims. I think he's taken a couple top 30 visits, so he's a potential top pick, possibly most likely a day 2 wide receiver in the draft this year. But the more and more I watch Marvin Mims, the more and more I'm moving him up my rankings.
There you go.
Let's get into our tight ends. Probably one of the deeper rookie classes that we've seen in a long while. A lot of talented prospects. But Rhett, I need to hear your top 5.
All right, let's start off with probably the safest guy in this group. Let's go with Michael Mayer, tight end 1. Let's go with these athletes, tight ends 2 and 3, Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid. Luke Musgrave, tight end 4. And then tight end 5, a guy who I see with a little bit of Dallas Goedert in his game, is Tucker Kraft.
Yes, sir. Drew, what are your top 5 tight ends?
It's wild how similar we are there for a little bit. I got tier 1 by himself. I got Michael Mayer. I feel like he's the safest, as Rhett said, in his combination of blocking and pass catching ability. I don't think he's ever going to leave the field. Tier 2, I've got the athletic pass catchers that Rhett was talking about, Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, back-to-back at 2 and 3. And then tier 3, I've got Darnell Washington at number 4, so a guy that Rhett didn't have there, and then Luke Musgrave at 5, but Tucker Kraft's not far behind at 6.
I like it. I got Sam Laporta at tight end 1. I got Michael Mayer at tight end 2, but it's very close. It's very tight for me. I've watched a lot of Sam Laporta at Iowa there, tight end U. I got Dalton Kincaid as my tight end 3, Darnell Washington as my tight end 4, and Tucker Kraft as my tight end 5. There's not much difference here in the tight end rankings between the 3 of us, but with the freak that Darnell Washington is at the position, Rhett, you got to tell me why he isn't a top 5 prospect to you.
All right, let me start it off by saying this. Godzilla couldn't beat King Kong on Georgia's depth chart. And what I mean by that is this. Darnell Washington had a Brock Bowers size problem at Georgia. Mm-hmm. Now, we all know who Brock Bowers is going to be. He's going to be the tight end 1 in next year's class. He has the chance to be a first-round dynasty pick in rookie drafts next year at tight end 1. He's that skilled. But y'all need to tell me why a 6'7", 264-pound freak of nature that is an incredible athlete and had a year in the system at Georgia couldn't hold back Brock Bowers. Had his career high this year with catches. It was 28. He has under 50 catches for his career. Godzilla also couldn't beat out Lassie in terms of production at Georgia. And by Lassie, I mean Ladd McConkey. Have y'all seen Ladd McConkey? This guy is not going to be touching dynasty boards. So while Ladd McConkey does have an elite country music name, he is not an elite fantasy football prospect. So yes, with Darnell Washington, the measurables show a guy who can absolutely project. But I also see a guy who's never asserted himself when he had every reason to do so. Yes, Brock Bowers is an alpha athlete, but he also couldn't outproduce non-alpha athlete Kenny McIntosh or Ladd McConkey or George Pickens, who I do love George Pickens, by the way. And yes, I hear the argument on 11-inch hands. Listen, big hands are good for a lot of things. One thing they haven't been very good for so far is catching footballs. So in fantasy football, we want production. We aren't given production points for blocking. And that is Darnell Washington's strong point. So I can't look at him with confidence and draft him in rookie drafts. If somebody else wants to take him in that 3rd and 4th round and let me make the mistake and prove me wrong, I'm happy to let them do it. But it's a production thing. He hasn't shown me that production, so I can't with confidence go out there and take him highly. Can't do it.
Yeah, I just think he's going to be on the field a lot because he is an elite blocker as well.
That combine catch was nice, too. That one-handed combine catch. Oh,
yes,
man.
Sir.
That was combine porn.
Seeing a guy that big, and I've mentioned it before, hurdle somebody while he's running downfield with the ball in his hands just goes to prove his athleticism. You're right. he couldn't beat out Brock Bowers, but I don't think there's a tight end that can beat out what Brock Bowers can do as a tight end for that Georgia offense. The kid is elite. You mentioned it, most likely a top end a rookie pick next season. I don't think any guy on this list is going to be beating out what Brock Bowers can do on the field. So, but it's tough. He's a big body guy. He's tall. He's most likely going to be utilized in the end zone. He's probably bigger than 99% of the NFL players right now. So he's going to be put into situations where he's going to be able to produce fantasy points, but I don't see him going for 6 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown. I think most of his production is going to come in that money zone, in that red zone, and ultimately in the end zone. He's going to be, to me, a touchdown dependent tight end for fantasy managers coming into the season. But good argument. I don't hate it. I don't hate it, Rhett. Those are our top 5 rookies at each position. Most likely, these are going to be thrown out the window, filed in the filing cabinet from upper management, and they're going to be thrown out of whack as soon as the NFL draft happens. But speaking of drafts, we got a 1 QB rookie mock for you guys coming up. We're 2 days away. We've had our 2-round Superflex with Joe Pepe a couple of weeks ago. So go make sure if you're in a Superflex league that you check out that Superflex content. But let's get into our draft here. I picked the order earlier. I'm just got to let you guys know what it is. Rhett's got first overall because he's a Saints fan. I'm going to get second overall because I'm a Saints fan. And Drew, you get third because you're a Rams fan. And that's just the way it is. You're outnumbered, brother. That's just the way it's going to be.
You can take away my pick, but you can't take away my Super Bowl.
You mute this guy. But let's get into it. Remember, guys, it's a 1 QB rookie mock draft. So, Rhett, you're officially on the clock.
It's an easy pick. It's 1 QB. It's half PPR. It's not a Superflex format. It's Bijan Robinson. What doesn't need to be explained won't be explained. He's the 1-1. Everybody's in lockstep on it. Let's just keep it moving.
How heartbroken a lot of people are going to be if Bijan Robinson is the next Trent Richardson.
Oh,
I don't want to put that out there, but man, it's going to be tough. So much people are going to be picking him in that 101 slot, but yeah, you have to. He's generational talent. At 102, I'm going to go the wide receiver 1 of the class, Jackson Smith-Njigba. I just love what he can do. He's going to most likely end up on a decent team. If he ends up on the Philadelphia Eagles, I love it even more. Give me Jackson there. Drew, you're on the clock.
All right, so I'm going to take the running back to Jahmyr Gibbs here. I think this is kind of the clear top 3 and 1 quarterback right here. I was hoping that you would let me get Njigba. I'm hoping that Jahmyr Gibbs gets this fantastic landing spot so that Njigba might fall a spot once get a little cheaper post draft. But with Gibbs, it seems like if you're trying to project draft capital, there's been a lot of smoke with him possibly going in the first round. It leads me to believe that even if that's not true, he probably goes in the early to mid-second. So I would imagine he's the next running back off the board after Bijan Robinson. And I know that it's a shame that he couldn't have weighed in at 200 pounds instead of 199. But the reality is I still think he's the clear second best back in this class.
What would be that dream landing spot for Jahmyr Gibbs to you?
Oh, it's absolutely Miami. 100%. With their zone run schemes matching what he did in college, and then how often they targeted running backs in that. It's just I know they got Jeff Wilson, I know they got Raheem Mostert, but I mean, neither one of those guys are going to be touching Gibbs, and it might take him a little bit in his rookie year to work his way in and take over. But eventually, we know how much rookie running backs, especially the highly touted ones, love to take over in the second half of their rookie season. So I think that would make for a lot of fun for Jahmyr Gibbs in his rookie year and beyond.
I like it. Rhett, you're on the clock.
All right, is there any possibility that I can trade out of here right now? Because there's a clear tier break after this.
I agree.
Am I pigeonholed into taking one right now?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. God, this is tough because in a lot of ways, there's a very clear top three and there's a non-superflex format right here. So it feels a little bit too early to go quarterback. And it is. So I guess what I have to do right here is just go ahead and just play YOLO ball and go according to my rankings and say that at 1-4, just go ahead and give me Zay Flowers. And I'm cringing if I do it at this point because it's way too early. It is entirely too early for a Zay Flowers situation at 1-4. So in this situation, if I am in a one quarterback and I'm at the 1-4, all I'm learning tonight is that I'm looking to get out of this pick and try to get additional draft capital because it's not a comfortable pick at all.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate the pick, but I don't think, to me at least, the teardrop between JSN and my next pick here, Jordan Addison, is that great. I think they're really close. I love what Jordan Addison can do on the field. He's my pick here at the 1-5. They didn't have as much passing volume from when he went from Pitt to USC. He went from Kenny Pickett to Caleb Williams and didn't have a statistically as good of a season, but they also didn't throw the ball 500 times like they did at Pitt that year. So Jordan Addison to me is my Vontae Mack at all costs player when I'm entering these rookie drafts this year, and that's Jordan Addison to me. Drew, you're on the clock.
All right, so this is another tier break for me in one quarterback after this pick. So I'm taking Quentin Johnston here, which is the other receiver that I think is going to go in the first round. Ryan McDowell, friend of Fourth and Frames, who was just on the Dynasty 365 show at RyanMC23 on Twitter. If you don't know, he did a study of some of the top mock drafters in the business and saw where the offensive players were coming out in the 7-round mocks that were currently put out. And from the wide receiver position, it was Jordan Addison, Jason, and Zay Flowers that were all three projected to get first-round draft capital. So I think we took care of the 2 running backs that are projected to get round 1, round 2 draft capital for sure. We took care of the 3 first-round receivers. I think at this point, unless you have just strong feelings about an RB3, if you're like a big-time Charbonnet believer or somebody else, I think that this is a clear tier break in one quarterback at this point.
Yep. Yeah, I like it. Rhett, you're on the clock, man.
All right, 107. Once again, I'm committing to my list. Give me Tajay Spears right here. Like I said, if nothing else, you're getting a Jerick McKinnon sort of player right here in this situation. And if you look 5 years down the road and you tell me that the guy drafted at 107 had the type of career that Jerick McKinnon has ended up having, because 70% of these guys are going to bust out anyway, then you'd be very content with that. So I have to stick with it. All I'm learning tonight, once again, is that you either want to be at the top of the round or the bottom of the round and one quarterback this year. So,
yeah, definitely.
That's a little rich for Spears there, but I don't hate it. You are going based on your rankings. For me, at the 1-8, I'm going CJ Stroud, my QB1 of the class. I think it's a sweet spot to get him before the rest of the running backs and before the teardrops of the wide receivers. So give me the CJ Stroud there at the 1-8. Drew, what you got next?
So for this one, I'm going to take a running back here. I'm going to take Zach Charbonnet. I mentioned the study that Ryan McDowell did over recent mock drafts, and I mentioned that, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, they were the clear 1-2. The only other guy that averaged out as a second-round pick in these mock drafts was Zach Charbonnet. So, I already mentioned my tier 3 running back is pretty long, with Charbonnet being at the top of it. A lot of that is because of his projected draft capital. So if we're trying to play the projection game prior to the draft, I'm going to lay my bet on what some of these mock drafts are saying, and so I'm going to grab Charbonnet here.
I like it. Rhett, you got 110.
Yeah, and this is the point where, like we said, bottom of the first round, those cringy sort of picks that you're going to make in the middle of the round are starting to clear themselves out. And then at 110, you get a slam dunk of a pick strictly because of his upside. You got to go quarterback here. You got to go Anthony Richardson. And finally, you get to start to feel good about this because so far I haven't felt great about this mock so far outside of Bijan.
hard not to feel good about Bijan, a guy that's marketed himself where he has his own mustard. It's hard not to be excited for Bijan Mustardson. At the 111, I'm going my RB3 of the class, TCU Horned Frog, Kendry Miller. He's a do-it-all running back. That face of that offense completely changed when he went down. Not saying that they would have beat Georgia with Kendry Miller in the game because Georgia completely outclassed TCU in the Natty, but I think they maybe would have made it a little closer if they had a running back that they could lean on to eat up some of that clock. So I'm good with taking Kendry Miller here at the 111. I'm loving the value. Drew, you got the 112, man. What do you got?
So this is as early as I'm willing to do it, but I'm going to take the first tight end off the board. I'm going to grab Michael Mayer right here, right at the end of the first. This is if you're not a Kyle Pitts level tight end, with how long tight ends take to develop, I don't like to spend anything like one of the last couple picks in the first or an early second on the tight end one. So right here is kind of where I'm comfortable doing it. So Michael Mayer, tight end one off the board.
I like it. Rhett, you got the 201, brother.
All right, so at the 201, I'm a big believer in running backs, and there's a lot of running backs in this third tier, like we talked about. I'm going to go with a guy that has been able to create on his own, make a lot of mountains out of molehills, and a guy who actually held back Kendry Miller before he transferred. So at the 201, give me Zach Evans. I like the profile. I like his ability to make positive yardage. I like the fact that he's going to be a little bit of a game breaker. He can do a little bit of everything between the tackles. At the top of the second round, you get a guy like this. You have to feel good about it. And, let's roll with it, baby.
Yep. I was big into Zach Evans when he was at TCU, going over to Ole Miss. I love him as a prospect. There was knocks about his character, but I'm not buying all that. Given the opportunity, I think Zach Evans is going to flourish in the NFL. 2-2, I'm going UNC wide receiver Josh Downs. He is my wide receiver 5. I like where he's going to end up in the NFL. He's a do-it-all wide receiver. He's played in the slot. He's played on the outside. He's got decent speed. And as Stacy mentioned earlier, I want players that have the dog in them. I'm a big Kayshon Boutte guy. And if you took Josh Downs' character and you input it into Kayshon Boutte's a top-end wide receiver in the class, but he's fallen off quite a bit. Drew, what do you got at 2-3?
So 203, I'm going to take what I think is the best big play receiver in this class. And no, it's not Jalen Hyatt. To me, I think that man is going to be Marvin Mims, my wide receiver 5. So at this point, I expect him to get second to third round draft capital. I know it's going to be kind of boom or bust, but I like Mims here at the 203.
Yep. I like it. You probably just sniped Rhett because he also had him in his top 5 wide receivers. But
That's
Rhett,
true. Maybe
you're at the 204. Hopefully you can gather yourself after that Marvin Mims snipe. Well, what do you got?
Listen, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the guy who is I'm just going to spam running backs. I'm going to go on my RB7 right here because I love his upside if he can put it all together. Give me Izzy Abanikanda out of Pitt. We know the high-end speed is there. We know that he's got this big playability. There are questions there as to how decisive a runner he is and how much of a pass catcher he actually can be. But it's the middle of the second round. There's a guy that has this sort of athletic profile. He blew it up in his pro day. He showed everyone what he can do. At this point, as we've talked about a couple weeks ago with Joe, second round of drafts, you're kind of starting to look for the upside right there. So you got a high-risk guy, high-reward guy potentially in Izzy at 2-4. You take that risk, man.
Yep, I don't hate it at all. With the next pick, I'm selecting wide receiver out of Tennessee, and I thought you were going to snipe me there, Drew. The speedster himself, Jalen Hyatt. I just love what he can do on the field. Given the right situation, and I believe he's a player that's going to need that right situation to flourish at the next level, Jalen Hyatt can be that big boom wide receiver that can win you some of your weeks. So I like the value there with Jalen Hyatt. Drew, you're on the clock.
Oh man, you already know. I get to pick another running back here in the mid-second. I wonder who it could be. Give me Sean Tucker right here, man. I'm gonna have to have the NFL tell me that they just hate this guy because I can't understand it. If he doesn't get decent draft capital, he's got good size. He's got good rushing production. He can get in the end zone. He can catch passes. I know his route tree isn't extremely diverse, but as a college running back coming in, you can work with it. He can play all three downs. He's got the size to do so. I know he's got the concerns with the medicals and things like that, but the dude's a track star with a 3-down skill set. So I'm smitten, man.
When I saw that he repped 29 on the bench, I just thought about the nasty stiff arm that this guy must have and what it must feel like getting punched in the mouth by Sean Tucker. If he's cleared medically and he gets decent draft capital, I mean, we've seen Isaiah Pacheco ball out for the Kansas City Chiefs. There's no reason that Sean Tucker can't be that guy for an NFL team if they take him as a late flyer. So I like the pick there. Rhett, you're back on the clock.
Oh, you're about to hate me for this because I'm about to take your guy right here. Give me Kayshon Boutte out of LSU. And look, I've hated on him relentlessly. I've done it. I'm that guy. But you know what? It's the middle of the second round, mid to late second round. And you have a guy that, frankly, we're talking about the way he tested. And we're also talking about a receiver that doesn't have to beat you vertically to win. This is a guy that can – and I think really has that opportunity to be a Robert Woods type of receiver in the NFL. And if you can get a Robert Woods type late in the second round of your rookie drafts, you do that every single day.
Yep. The athletic profile's there. The early breakout age is there. The early production is there. It seemed to have slipped once he had that ankle injury, which I believe he had 2 procedures on. One for the surgery and one for the cleanup. And you could see after that, his numbers weren't quite the same. Now, whether that was the change in quarterback, the change in coaching system, I think that's all going to have a play into his role on that LSU offense. But I'm excited for where I've been able to draft Kayshon Boutte in these recent rookie mocks. And you absolutely sniped me, my guy. Absolutely sniped me. But with the next pick, I'm taking probably one of the better QB prospects in the class. Yes, he is smaller than most, but I'm going Bryce Young out of Alabama. It's a 1 QB mock. Getting him here this late in the second with his opportunity to be a starter year 1. It's an absolute smash pick for me. Drew, you're on the clock.
Talk about sniping, man. You just got me there too. I was absolutely taking Bryce. I couldn't believe I thought he was going to make it to me. All right, so I'm going to go back to the wide receiver. Well, I've talked enough about running backs, I guess. I'm going to take another receiver in that tier 3 range for me that I like a lot. That in a year of the short kings actually has some size on him. And it's the Tennessee receiver that I prefer of the two, which is Cedric Tillman. With him, the biggest concern, I guess, would be the fact that he didn't hit that 20% dominator rating until he was over 20 years old. But he's got the size that a lot in this class lack. And I think that could possibly – it seems like this wide receiver class, outside of the top few guys, I think you're going to get more into teams like drafting for skill set or drafting for what they need because there's not a lot of complete receivers. So if you want a big play guy, you go reach on Mims or Jalen Hyatt or something like that. Or if you need a possession receiver, an outside guy, you can go look at Cedric Tillman or Xavier Hutchinson or, there's very defined skill sets in this receiver room once you get past the first round guys. So I like Cedric Tillman. I like what he put on tape, and he's a guy that I've been rising on a lot recently.
Yeah, love his profile. Rhett, you're officially on the clock. Please don't snipe me again.
Listen, I can't make any promises, but I'm stuck between 2 guys right here. And, we're talking about upside, and we're talking about guys who can have big potential. I'm going to take a bit of a risk out here late in the second round and go ahead and give me Devin Achane out of Texas A&M. I'm going to go ahead and make this argument here, and let's talk about it. There was a guy several years ago who blew up the college game, had speed, was undersized, and was maybe a little bit before his time. and a good comp for who he was in college, Devin Achane, you're looking at a guy like LaMichael James who couldn't quite make it happen in the league, but had those moments. And so for me, the league has come a long way since then. Those smaller, quicker running backs have more of a place than they did before. I get that he has to go to the absolute right situation, but you know what?
Yeah.
We don't have those situations yet. So for now, we're drafting on pure profiles and skill sets, and he's the fastest running back in this draft, which means he probably has the most home run ability in this draft amongst these running backs. So at 210, I'll gladly take that pending draft capital. If something happens where his draft capital is terrible or he goes to a bad situation, the second round thing is not happening in rookie drafts for him, and I understand that. But for now, with a grain of salt, Devin Achane 210.
I like it. With my last pick of the draft, I'm going my tight end one, Sammy Laporta. Did I snipe you again, Drew? Oh,
Yeah, man. This is 2 picks in a row. Come on.
Hey, man. Great minds think alike, brother. I'm going Sam Laporta here. He's the second QB drafted in this second tight end drafted in this mock draft here. I like the value. Considering that most dynasty leagues are leaning towards that tight end premium, these rookie tight ends have a little bit more value entering the NFL. We said it for a lot of these guys. Situation is going to matter. If he goes into a spot where the tight end room is absolutely crowded, it's going to spell trouble. I'm hoping he ends up on a team maybe like the Raiders or a team that's tight end needy. Maybe the Houston Texans. They're in need of some weapons there on the offense. But I'm going Sam Laporta. And to finish it off, Drew, what do you got, man?
Oh, you made it easy for me because it was between 2 guys. It was between Sam Laporta and it was between a running back that I've been rising on a lot lately that I got to get in here and show some love, and that's Tank Bigsby, the running back out of Auburn. This man, he has the size, 6 foot, 210. He hit that 20% dominator rating at 19 years old. Speaking of Gator J, you're welcome. But this dude's got the size. He's got the makeup. He just played behind some shit offensive line play. Excuse my language. But like he really was a victim of some poor offensive line play. And I don't think I realized it as much until I really started digging into some of his games. But I like the size. I like the skill set. And I think the draft capital, as far as day 2, could possibly be there because of his metrics. So we'll see. So right now, I'm willing to take the shot at the end of the second.
Yeah, I don't hate that pick at all. Tank Bigsby was an absolute monster at Auburn early on in his collegiate career. Kind of flustered a little bit there. They had Jarquez Hunter, and I believe there was someone else, Damari Alston, who was taking snaps away from him. But at the end of the second there, you're hammering, end of the second into the third, you're hammering running backs in this deep class. Thank you for joining Fourth and Frames. I'm Chris Battistel, and I've had the pleasure of being joined by my 2 esteemed co-hosts, Rhett Manuel, which you can find at R Manuel Sports, and Drew Scott, which you can find at Drew3MR on Twitter. We appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time to watch. That's it for us. Don't forget to tune in next week when we break down everything post-NFL draft. Stay informed, stay engaged, and stay ahead of the game.